That's the punishment for stealing my dad from me, Kelly said in the middle of our argument. She grabbed my arm and forcefully dragged me outside. Then she shoved me into a dirty, scary basement. I tried my best to resist, but younger people are just stronger. I was trapped inside the scary basement. In the dark and chilly basement, I started to feel ill. What should I do? How can I get out of here? Though I was panicking, I felt a slight weight in the back pocket of my jeans. Oh yeah, I have this. I quickly searched my pocket. My name is Olivia Anderson, and I'm 45 years old. I work as an administrative assistant at a company. The job isn't too complicated, but it's never boring. I find it fulfilling, and I love my coworkers because they are all kind-hearted. It might be rare, but I genuinely enjoy my job every day and don't find it burdensome. However, there was one thing that concerned me. I wasn't married. Seeing my friends get married and live happily ever after made me feel both envious and a bit sad. The thought of living the rest of my life alone was quite daunting. There were no prospects in sight, and I constantly wondered if any man would ever take an interest in me. Every day, I was consumed by thoughts of the future, filled with unease. A few years after I started having these thoughts, I finally got married. His name is James Anderson. He's 9 years older than me and works at one of our client companies. James had recently become the point of contact for the company I worked at, so he visited often. At first, we were both hesitant, but gradually we grew closer and started dating. After a few years, James and I were able to tie the knot. I was truly happy. I hoped with all my heart that we would build a happy home together. James has a 17-year-old daughter named Kelly from his previous marriage. He had been upfront about Kelly while we were dating, and I had met her several times. Kelly is very reserved and seems particularly fond of James. She was always by his side, glued to him. Seeing Kelly like that warmed my heart. I hoped that as we started living together, Kelly and I would become close. However, I didn't fully understand Kelly's true nature. After marrying James, I moved into the home he shared with Kelly. I quit my job to become a homemaker, doing everything I could to ensure that James and Kelly had a comfortable life. I prepared well-balanced meals and kept the house tidy. It might seem ordinary, but I believed it would make their lives more pleasant. Having a family was so different from living alone. Every little household chore became a lot more challenging. What comforted me during those times was a cat named Oliver. Oliver had always been at James's house. He was a bit chubby, and I heard he liked to sneak out, but I believed that as long as I was always at home, he wouldn't run away. Even though I faced many exhausting days, I always felt soothed admiring Oliver. Life after marriage had its challenges, but I felt much happier than when I was single. However, something weighed on my mind. I worried that Kelly might not think highly of me, leading her to ignore me. Even when I tried to start a conversation, Kelly would look at me with a confused expression and continue to ignore me. "Kelly, welcome home," I would say, but Kelly would only give me a fleeting glance and not respond. "How was school today? Did you have fun?" I asked, hoping to connect, but Kelly would remain silent, making me feel more isolated. I tried to keep the conversation going, but she still wouldn't say a word. After petting Oliver for a bit, she went straight to her room. Even though she kept ignoring me, I believed she just hadn't accepted me yet. She was at that challenging age of 17. If her father remarried and suddenly there's a new woman in the house who isn't her real mother, it's understandable that she would be wary. I had met Kelly a few times before James and I got married, but she just couldn't seem to warm up to me. I was racking my brain trying to figure out how to get Kelly to accept me, but despite my efforts, Kelly never warmed up to me. Ignoring me became her norm. She began openly avoiding me, and whenever she was around me, she had a constant look of displeasure on her face. When James was home, she'd talk a bit, probably to avoid upsetting him, as she adored him so much. Still, I thought it was better than not talking at all. It's been about 5 years since I married James. The distance between Kelly and me never seemed to close, and life felt kind of empty. Even after living together for 4 years, I didn't know what Kelly's favorite food was or what her hobbies were. The only thing I knew was that she adored Oliver. I had grown used to Kelly's gaze, which initially felt intimidating. When Kelly reached high school, she surprisingly started a conversation with me. "Hey." "Huh? What's up?" I was taken aback that Kelly spoke to me, and my voice unintentionally went up a notch. Was she finally opening up to me? What's she going to say? Various emotions bubbled up, but I silently waited for Kelly's words. However, what Kelly said was completely unexpected. "How long are you going to stay in this house?" "What?" "I'm asking how long you're planning to stay. Can you leave soon? You're in the way." Why would you say that? Being told out of the blue to leave was a shock. I was puzzled as to why she'd suddenly say that. Questions swirled in my head, but finding the words was challenging. Then Kelly explained her feelings, shedding light on her past actions. "Look, I love my dad. It was just the two of us, you know. Why did we suddenly have to live with an old woman like you acting all motherly? I just can't handle it." "What?" "I thought if I treated you like you weren't there, you'd break and divorce him. Was school fun? Seriously gross." I was bombarded with her hurtful words, leaving me speechless. "In front of Dad, you act all high and mighty, but it's been hard for me, you know. Maybe it's time you realized your worth, old lady." Seeing my sad face, Kelly seemed satisfied and flashed a smile. I had never seen Kelly look like that before as she walked away. All along, she had harbored such negative feelings towards me. Her hurtful words and the suggestion to reflect on my worth kept echoing in my head. Before I knew it, tears streamed down my face. What was the point of all the effort these past 5 years? I tried so hard to gain Kelly's approval, but in the end, she never accepted me. How should I approach Kelly now? I tried desperately to find an answer, but none came. From that day on, Kelly began hurling insults at me. "Olivia, I've always thought this, but you're really bad at cooking. It's seriously awful." "Oh really? I'm sorry. It's sad for Dad, you know. There are so many better people than you out there. With Dad's charm, he could remarry in a heartbeat." Kelly would say things like this, but she would put on a facade in front of James. "You know, Olivia's cooking is really delicious, right, Kelly?" "Yeah, it's yummy," Kelly would reply. It wasn't new, but seeing Kelly's quick switch always left me dumbfounded. "What's wrong, Olivia?" James would ask. "Olivia is just so happy. I feel happy yet not happy, such a complicated emotion that probably no one can understand." "I guess so," I replied, trying to maintain my composure. But Kelly lost all restraint and kept on with her tirades. Many times, I thought about breaking down and confiding in James, but I never could take that step. James always seemed so busy with his daily work. I just couldn't bring myself to burden him with my problems. I thought if I just endured, everything would be okay. Even if Kelly said she loved James, she might eventually move out and live alone. I saw it as just enduring until then. 6 years later, Kelly went on to college after graduating high school and later got a job at a company near home. Around the same time Kelly started working, James began taking on business trips. Initially, they were just for a day or two, but gradually the duration increased. It wasn't rare for him to be gone for 2 weeks or even an entire month. A few months after these trips began, Kelly's verbal abuse didn't stop. With James gone, it seemed Kelly had no filter. "The food's terrible. Can't you do something about it?" "Say something," Kelly demanded as she left her unfinished meal and quickly went to Oliver's place. I looked at the leftover food and gently put down my knife and fork. I had endured so much up to this point, but one day I finally reached my breaking point. Endless verbal abuse and a cold attitude every day. I was treated more like a maid than a mother. There wasn't any particular trigger. While Kelly was hurling insults at me as usual, I finally snapped. Just get out already. You're so annoying. Hey, you're always telling me I'm a bother and to leave. Enough is enough, I shouted back. Kelly, not used to me talking back, was taken aback, but quickly responded with harsh words. What? Why are you suddenly talking back? I seriously can't deal with this. I can't take it anymore. If you can't stand it, why don't you move out? You have a job, you have money, and you do fine on your own. I'm a homemaker. I can't just up and leave. Maybe I hit a nerve because she didn't respond. I could tell she was fuming. Lost your tongue? What happened to all that energy just a moment ago? I said. Just as I was about to get the upper hand, Kelly suddenly grabbed my arm, squeezing painfully tight. Ouch! I protested, but Kelly wasn't listening. She forcefully dragged me outside. Hey! I yelled as she pulled me toward a small storage theory basement. Without hesitation, she pushed me into it. Though I resisted, I was no match for her younger strength. In an instant, I was locked inside the scary basement. What are you doing? Hey, let me out. I desperately banged on the wall, pleading with Kelly to release me, but she didn't seem to care. I can't just let you out, even though you say so. Oh, by the way, I haven't told you, but I've got a trip planned for 4 days. Well, try to survive in that cramped theory basement. 4 days? Are you serious? Hey, what about Oliver? Oliver has an automatic feeder, so he'll be fine, she said. I was stunned by her completely irresponsible comment. You're being so irresponsible. Shut up. Never come out of there again, she yelled back. That's the punishment for stealing my dad from me. Soon after, Kelly's presence disappeared. Inside the dark, cold, scary basement, I started feeling sick. What am I going to do? I can't bear to stay in here for 4 whole days. I started panicking even more, desperately banging on the walls, but it was no use. At that moment, I suddenly felt the weight in my pants pocket. Oh yeah, I have it. I quickly reached into my pocket and pulled out my smartphone. Such a lucky break. I called my nearby friend, Linda Blair. Oh hey, Linda. Olivia, what's up? It's rare for you to call. I explained my situation and asked Linda to come help. In just a few minutes, Linda arrived. Are you okay? She asked as she opened the door, letting in the bright sunlight. Even though I'd only been in the scary basement for a few hours, it felt like days since I'd been outside. I thanked Linda, and she took me to her house. I didn't have my keys, and James was away on a business trip. Given all that, Linda told me I could stay at her place for as long as I needed. When I got out of the scary basement, I felt that Kelly was gone. She probably already left for her trip. The next thing I needed to do was contact James. I sent him a message, telling him what happened and where I was. I couldn't exactly ask him to come back, but deep down, I hoped he would. While chatting with Linda, I received a call from James. Hello, Olivia. Are you okay? He asked. James, I'm fine. Thanks. Listen, I'm heading home now. I'll come pick you up, so wait at your friend's place a bit longer, okay? Oh, what about your work? Forget work. Just know I'm on my way. I think it'll take about 5 hours, so hang tight. James seemed worried and was making the effort to come back. I thanked James and hung up. He said he's coming to pick me up. Can I stay here for another 5 hours or so? I asked Linda. Of course. Honestly, you have such a caring husband. I can kind of see why Kelly might be a bit jealous. Jealous? Yes, jealous. She was like, I love Dad, right? From what I've heard, she's probably jealous that you married her beloved dad. Is that so? Now that it was mentioned, it did seem like jealousy. Just because she's family doesn't mean you should hold back. Telling her off when needed is for Kelly's own good, you know. Okay, Linda's right, I thought. No matter how long we've lived together, acting impulsively in anger, like I did, isn't going to help Kelly. But how can I get through to her? I racked my brain for a solution and came up with a somewhat forceful plan. I immediately shared the plan with Linda. That's a pretty cool idea. Give it a shot, she said. I'll give it my best shot. Linda seemed amused and supported the idea. 2 hours later, James arrived at Linda's house and knocked on the door. "Are you okay, Olivia?" "I'm fine, thank you, but you were at work." "You matter more to me than any job," he said. James had decided to take a few days off from work. "Is it okay for you to take time off like that?" "Yeah, they said they'll manage. I feel like I need to have a serious talk with Kelly." After that, I explained to James in detail what Kelly had done to me and how I ended up trapped in the storage basement. James listened intently and apologized. "I'm sorry for not noticing. It's not just your fault. I didn't speak up, and Kelly was doing all this secretly. Still, I should have noticed something was off. I'm truly sorry." A heavy atmosphere lingered until Linda broke through it. "Hey, why the long face? You're going to scold Kelly, right? Buck up." Linda's words somehow inspired me. "You're right." Afterward, we thanked Linda and went home. I felt like I might have troubled James, but if this could make Kelly's behavior settle down, I'd be glad. When we got home and things calmed down a bit, I told James about my plan for Kelly and why I felt the need to go to such lengths. After pondering for a moment, James said, "Well, honestly, considering Kelly's past, it might take something drastic to get through to her." 2 days later, it was the day Kelly would return. Since we didn't know when she'd be back, we left the window closest to the basement open, keeping an eye out for her return. Around 5:00 p.m., a taxi stopped in front of our house, and Kelly stepped out with her luggage. The plan I put into action involved making the basement, where I was supposedly locked up, seem ransacked and emit a rotting smell. Frankly, it's debatable if a human being would pass away in such conditions for 4 days. Moreover, even if the person did pass away, the stench of decay wouldn't arise immediately. However, I bet that Kelly wouldn't know such details. With a slight intention to shock her, I executed my plan and secretly watched Kelly. I noticed Kelly stopped in front of the scary basement. From her reaction, it seemed my plan was working. "Oh, what's that smell?" Kelly frowned at the stench coming from the scary basement. She suddenly looked alarmed and forcefully opened the door to the scary basement. Kelly was choking from the intense odor, but her expression quickly changed to shock as she saw the inside. "What's this? It's been ransacked." We approached the stunned Kelly and spoke up. "How was your trip?" "Olivia, why? Wait, Dad's here too." "Kelly, we need to talk," James said with the scariest expression I'd ever seen on his face. Seeing James's face, Kelly seemed to understand everything. She sat on the sofa, looking downcast. "You've done some terrible things to Olivia," James said. Kelly remained silent. "You panicked earlier, thinking that maybe Olivia had died in there." "That's not it." "Then why did you look so panicked in front of the scary basement?" After a pause, Kelly revealed something unexpected. "I thought Oliver was inside." "What? Oliver?" "After all, Oliver used to escape often before. I thought maybe he somehow got inside the scary basement and couldn't get out." "You should have been worried about Olivia after locking her up. What would have happened if I hadn't come back?" "I forgot about Olivia. I couldn't believe she forgot she locked me up. I was so shocked I couldn't find the words, but James was livid. I never thought you'd be like this. I'm truly disappointed." "But wait, Kelly tried to justify herself, but James cut her off. "Wait for what? Going to make excuses? It's just that I felt like Olivia took Dad away from me." "You did something that could have had serious consequences just because you felt like it, and then you forgot about it. I never thought I raised you to be like this." With that, James sighed. He seemed to have completely given up on Kelly. Sensing this, Kelly stood up and started defending herself again. "Dad, don't say things like that. I just love you so much. If Olivia had just waited quietly for 4 days, I would have let her out. If Olivia hadn't called her friend, none of this would have happened. Dad didn't have to leave work early or take the day off. This is all your fault. Wouldn't it have been better if you hadn't obviously disliked me? Maybe if you hadn't locked me up, your misdeeds wouldn't have been discovered. You act on your own, but shove all the responsibility onto me." "What? Oh, by the way, it seems you were worried about Oliver. But didn't you once say that leaving Oliver alone for about 4 days was okay? That's just unthinkable. Do you realize you have a living creature under your care? I thought it would be fine. If you truly cared, leaving Oliver alone for 4 days wouldn't even be an option. By the way, do you even know what kind of food Oliver is currently eating? James and I have been taking care of him. I thought you loved Oliver, but now you only pet him when you feel like it and ignore him otherwise. It's so contradictory that it's almost funny." When I said what I was honestly thinking, Kelly blushed with anger. "Why do I have to be told that by you? You're a stranger, the one who took away my dad, so it's all your fault." "Hey, that's enough," James stepped in. Kelly, who couldn't understand what I was saying, snapped even more. "You've been spouting nothing but self-centered nonsense. How is it all Olivia's fault? I really can't understand what you're thinking," James said. "Daddy," Kelly cried, clinging to James. But James coldly looked down at her. "Just leave this house." "What? Why all of a sudden?" Kelly asked, shocked. "I can't keep someone in this house who, on a whim, endangers another's life and then forgets all about it and merrily goes about playing. Get out now." "But..." "Enough! You think you have the right to talk back. You really don't think of anyone but yourself." Kelly tried to persuade James, but he brushed her off. Desperate, she turned to me. "Olivia, please say something." "No, it's no use. Just leave," as James said. "Stop clinging to me." Just as he said, "You really only think about yourself." Hearing my words, Kelly hung her head with a resigned look. She dragged her suitcase and left the house. Her figure seemed lonely, but oddly enough, I didn't feel sorry for her at all. After Kelly left, the house was eerily quiet. The tension that had been building up for years finally seemed to dissipate, but it left an uncomfortable silence. James sat down heavily on the sofa, his face a mixture of anger, sadness, and exhaustion. "I'm sorry, Olivia. I should have seen what was happening. I should have done something sooner," James said, breaking the silence. "It's not your fault, James. Kelly hid her actions well, and I didn't speak up. We both share some of the blame," I replied, sitting next to him. "But still, I should have been more aware. As her father, I should have known," he sighed, rubbing his temples. "We can't change the past. We just have to move forward and hope Kelly learns from this," I said, trying to offer some comfort. James nodded, though he still looked troubled. "I'll reach out to her in a few days, once things have calmed down. Maybe some time apart will give her perspective." I agreed, hoping that this separation might indeed help Kelly reflect on her actions and understand the consequences of her behavior. For now, though, we had to focus on rebuilding our lives without the constant tension. The following days were a mix of relief and sadness. The house felt lighter without Kelly's presence, but there was also an emptiness. I kept myself busy with household chores and taking care of Oliver, who seemed to sense the change and stayed close to me. James took a few more days off work to be with me. We spent time talking about the future, making plans to strengthen our relationship, and discussing how to handle things if Kelly decided to come back. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, James turned to me and said, "Thank you for staying strong through all of this, Olivia. I know it hasn't been easy." "It hasn't been easy for you either, James. But we're in this together, and we'll get through it," I replied, squeezing his hand. We sat in comfortable silence, finding solace in each other's presence. Despite the turmoil of the past few days, I felt hopeful for the first time in a long while. 2 weeks later, James received a call from Kelly. She sounded calmer, though there was still a hint of defiance in her voice. They talked for a long time, and James assured her that he still loved her, but made it clear that her actions had serious consequences. Kelly agreed to seek counseling and apologized for her behavior. It was a small step, but a significant one. We all knew it would take time to rebuild trust, but this was a start. Life gradually returned to a new normal. James and I focused on strengthening our marriage and creating a supportive environment at home. Kelly stayed away for a while, giving herself the space to grow and reflect. As the months passed, the wounds began to heal. Kelly visited occasionally, and while there were still challenges, the atmosphere was less charged. We were cautiously optimistic, hoping that with time, we could all find a way to coexist peacefully and perhaps even become closer as a family. I received a lot of emails and calls from Kelly. She sent me messages like, "I'm sorry," and "Please forgive me." Looking at the volume and timing of those emails, and calls sending a bunch all at once or at random times, regardless of day or night, it really showed her self-centered side. She also sent updates about where she's been living and how she's been getting by. Apparently, she's been living in cheap motels while working. I thought she could just stay at a hotel or rent an apartment, but she seems picky about having separate bathrooms, wanting a clean place, and so on. She's having a hard time settling on a place, and even if she finds a good one, the rent is too high for her. She sent the same messages to James, who was stunned. He said, "It's either she really can't manage on her own, or she's just too selfish." But honestly, no matter the situation, I'd never let Kelly back into this house. I really wish she'd take a moment on her own to reflect on her actions. After Kelly left, our lives returned to peace. James still travels for work, but not as much as before, so we have more time to relax together. It's nice not having to be so careful around each other and to just relax. Kelly never listened no matter how many times we warned her, so in a way, I'm glad things turned out this way. Every day spent with James is pure joy. After finishing the housework and relaxing on the sofa, Oliver climbed onto my belly. He meowed and curled up to sleep. I hope for many more moments like this. As I petted Oliver, I found myself lost in these thoughts. The flood of messages from Kelly was overwhelming. Every day, she'd send me multiple emails, each one a mix of apologies and updates. "I'm really sorry. Please forgive me," one message read. Another detailed her struggles, explaining how she was living in a cheap motel because she couldn't find a place that met her standards within her budget. She complained about dirty bathrooms and high rents, showing her usual picky nature. It was clear she was having a tough time, but her self-centered approach made it hard to sympathize fully. She didn't seem to grasp the seriousness of what she had done or show any real understanding of the hurt she caused. The same pattern of messages went to James, who was equally stunned. He remarked, "It's either she really can't manage on her own, or she's just too selfish." Despite her situation, I knew I couldn't let Kelly back into our home. She needed time to reflect on her actions and understand the consequences. Bringing her back would only mean more chaos and tension, and I wasn't willing to go through that again. I hoped that this time apart would help her grow and change for the better. With Kelly gone, our home became a place of peace and relaxation. James's work trips became less frequent, giving us more time together. We no longer had to tiptoe around Kelly's moods and behavior. The quiet moments we shared were filled with comfort and joy. Whether we were having dinner, watching TV, or simply sitting in silence, there was a sense of harmony that had been missing for so long. One evening, after finishing my chores, I settled on the sofa with Oliver. The little cat, sensing my calm, jumped onto my belly, meowed softly, and curled up to sleep. I stroked his fur, feeling his gentle purring. It was in these simple moments that I found the greatest happiness. As I sat there, my mind wandered to the future. I imagined more days like this, filled with peace and contentment. I thought about how James and I could continue to strengthen our bond, making up for the lost time we spent dealing with Kelly's issues. I also hoped that Kelly, wherever she was, would find her way and learn to take responsibility for her actions. Despite the challenges we faced, I felt hopeful. Life had a way of throwing unexpected hurdles, but we had navigated through them and come out stronger. The future seemed bright, and I was ready to embrace it with open arms. Oliver stirred slightly, adjusting his position before settling back down. His warmth and softness were comforting reminders of the love and stability I now had. As I continued to pet him, I felt a sense of gratitude for these peaceful days and the strength to face whatever came next. The days turned into weeks, and our lives continued to improve. James's presence at home made a significant difference. We spent our weekends exploring new hobbies, going for long walks, and even planning a few short trips. It felt like a second honeymoon, a chance to reconnect and rebuild our lives together. Every so often, James would check in with Kelly, encouraging her to seek counseling and offering support from a distance. It was clear he still cared for her deeply, but he also understood the need for her to learn and grow on her own. Our conversations about Kelly were more hopeful than before, focusing on her potential for change rather than the mistakes of the past. In the quiet moments, I often reflected on how far we had come. The journey had been tough, but it had also brought James and me closer. We had learned to communicate better, to support each other more fully, and to cherish the peaceful moments we now enjoyed. Oliver remained a constant source of comfort and joy. His playful antics and affectionate nature were daily reminders of the simple pleasures in life. Whether he was chasing a toy or curling up next to us, he added a touch of warmth and love to our home. As the seasons changed, so did our outlook on life. We were no longer weighed down by the past, but were instead looking forward to a future filled with possibility. Each day was a new opportunity to build on the peace we had found and to create a life that was truly our own. In the end, it wasn't just about surviving the storm, but about finding the strength to thrive in its aftermath. With James by my side and the love we shared, I knew we could face anything that came our way. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it with all my heart.